GovDAO is a decentralized governance organization on GNO.land. It allows members to propose, vote, and execute actions to shape the future of the ecosystem. Let's dive into the theory of how works GovDAO, the associated tools, and an explanation of the current implementations. A DAO, DAO, or Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, is a community that governs by itself, without classic leadership. Part due to its decentralized computing, it has no central authority. The classic pattern is member votes on proposals that can be executed if passed. They are then executed through smart contracts. You will find two types of DAO. The permissions, which only invited members can participate, which generally enforce or know your customers. It is generally the case in private DAO or small communities of contributors, for example, and permissionless where anyone can join and vote through public procedures. We generally go through governance tokens. GovDAO is the governance DAO of GNO.land, and it is a permissioned DAO with 3 tiers optional based votings. You have T1, T2, and T3. The tier can be necessary to vote on some proposal if some filters are activated. It is built with a proxy pattern for upgradabilities, which I will go more in details after. Both tier changing and upgrade of the implementations can be voted through a proposal. Basically, its working is simple. DAO's member of GovDAO submits new proposal that will go through the proxy. Member votes based on their tier privilege. Proposal then can be executed if we reach the supermajority of 66%, and all the voters must have a registered namespace for easier tracking. There's a 3-tier membership system, so as I said earlier, the tier-based voting is optional. It all depends on your proposal filter configurations. The T1 have 3 votes per, so it means each of these votes counts for 3 persons, and it can vote on every proposal. It is generally the most trustable users. The T2 can vote on T2 and T3, and T3 only on T3, so they have 2 vote per and only 1 vote per. And at Genesis, tier assignment and mainly invitation point is being determined, as invitation point is not a renewable asset. It is only defined at Genesis, or it can be obtained during proposals. It lets T1 and T2 invite any T3 at any time without asking the other tiers. It will be done instantly using the add member functions. Its flow is quite simple, so you create a proposal that goes through the proxy. It goes the same for the voting and every actions. Then it runs the implementation for the proposal creations, which register its proposal. Then for the voting process, until supermajority is reached, which is over 66%, the votes can still continue, and if we are above it, the proposal can be executed through a manual trigger, or it can be denied. Let's see how to create a proposal. So first you need to create what we call an executor. It is simply a function that will be executed by the GovDAO. You can see it as a callback, and you have a description of what the actions do. And you have a safe executor, which only allowed DAOs can execute. It is a list that is defined in the proxy, but at the time it is not usable in v3, or at least I didn't find a way to do it. Then you have to create a request, which has a title, a description, and the executor you created earlier, or can add a filter by tier, which only allows T1 to vote, T2 and T3, and so on, as we saw earlier. And then you submit it with create proposal functions, which return our proposal IDs. All of these actions can only be executed by members, so you must be sure to be added if you want to act in the DAO, since it is a permissions DAO. There is some requirement though, so as I said earlier, you must be a member, you must have a namespace, your tier must be allowed for this proposal, only 1 vote per members on each proposal, and proposal must still be open. Now if you want to vote on a proposal, you have to find the proposal IDs on GNO web, and you have to submit your votes, which is simply a GNO key make transaction call on must vote on proposal simple. So you just type the proposal ID and the string, which can be yes, no, or abstain. As to note, if you vote abstain, it will not count for the supermajority. Now, what can GovDAO vote on? You have treasury operation, so you can send money on a certain project, let's say, for example, for a grant. You can add new members. You can change some parameter on the protocol, so that can be the implementations of the governance code. and can be system configuration as the acceptance of validator, for example. So let's go through an example. So here we want to pay developers an amount of GNOT for a grant. So we set our callback, which is a treasury.send with an object payment. We create our executor. Then we create our proposal request with our executor. We have a title, a description, and we create our proposals. It is quite self-explanatory, so I won't go too deep into it. There's many DAOs in different blockchains. The most known one is the DAO, which was the first major experiment on Ethereum, which was hacked after due to a bug of reentrancy attack. If you go deeper, there is plenty of DAOs that exist. You have Sky, which was formerly MakerDAOs for decentralized finance and stablecoins governance. Uniswap DAO, which has decentralized exchange governance. You will see most of them have a token that you can buy and you can vote on. Now about the tooling, you have gno.land, which is tools made by Samourai.world. So it is our cooperation. There's a GovDAO page, which basically refer the different proposal. This one is to add our team in the valset. You can see the breakdowns, the votes, the files, which is the code that's going to be executed. You can see the address, the proposal request, new validator proposal request. It is backed by a tool named GNO Monitoring, which is also made by Samourai.world. It is a backend that will follow what's happening on GovDAO and some other informations as this way, like the activity of validators too. Now here is the GNO web page of GovDAO, so you can see the proposal we see just before, which has been authored by Norman. It is still active and it is eligible to vote for every tier. We can click on the proposal to see what is it made for, which is basically the same information. We can click on the actions below to vote, which will redirect us in the functions. Must vote on proposal simples. We just have to copy the links, or we can execute directly using Adena. I've also made an activity parser, which lets you get the activities of the different voters in GovDAO. It is a reference to these issues I've made some times ago. It creates you a result like this way with the voting statistics. You have every profile, the proposal voted, and the address that didn't vote. This is just an example output. It is not showing the reality of the time. And as well, I've made a fake data script. I will add some README to explain how it's working precisely, but basically it's called the write functions, so you can test GovDAO in locals. I've made this one in the context of gno.land, which basically forces us to make a script to test our projects. The pull request is gno.land local testings, and if we explore it, we have the fake data, setup environment, and test GovDAO. I will add in descriptions a better README to explain and launch all of these scripts if you ever need to test GovDAO in locals. Now let's go in the code. I will show in VS Code directly, but the code is the same if you go on GitHub. You will be able to find this code in example, gno.land, realm, gov/DAO, and all the implementation is in v3. We start by the proxy code. To make it simple, you have some functions you will be able to call. Every time you want to interact with GovDAO, you will have to go through the proxy. First and most importantly, you have create proposal, which will let you create a new proposal, as said earlier, with the proposal request. It will call pre-create proposal, which is the one of our implementations. This one can be changed over time if there is a proposal request, which is all the concept of upgradability I talked earlier. Then we set the proposal and we post-create proposals. It is the same for execute proposal. You will pre-execute proposal from our DAO implementation. Then you will get it and you will execute it from our executors. To vote, as said earlier, you have must vote on proposal simple, which only take a strings since it is intended to be used through Gnoki. And you have the vote on proposal with the structures, which is being defined just over there. Anyways, and last to check the types, the most important types you must remember are the vote options, the vote request, the filters, the proposal request, the proposals, and you have where the proposals are being stored. Secret is sequential ID, is to get an ID like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And AVL3 is the data storage, data structure. It takes as a key an ID and it stores a pointer to a proposal. You have the interface for our DAO. which has all the functions we saw earlier. So creation proposal, vote on proposal, get proposal, and execute proposal. All these functions are the ones that may be changed over the futures. About the implementations, the loaders is the scripts being launched at the Genesis. You have every member that will be added to the GovDAO. You can see you have Manfred, Mark, Morgan, Antoine, Geronimo, tier 3, tier 2, Jinwoo, Alexis, and so on. You have the invitation point, which will let them invite some other member without asking the others. As to note, these members have one invitation point, but they won't be able to use it. Most of the functions used in the proxy are defined in the implement directories. You can create a new GovDAO. To create a proposal, we check if it is a valid call, which is basically called by users and not by a script. If we check it out right now, the functions DAO or v3 implement methods needs to be called directly by users. So users need to call the one of these two real to be a valid calls. And even though his valid call is being called in the directories v3 implement, like in pre-execute proposal, because it is not crossing, so it doesn't have the realm keyword over there, it stays in the same realm context than the one earlier, which should be the proxy, the one calling the implementations, which is why we verify only the proxy link. And from this valid call, we get the member from the GovDAO. And to end up the creation proposal, we will verify if it has some filtered on the proposal request, which will only limit by a certain tier. It is written when adding new members, but it should be deleted. Only members from tier 1 are allowed to vote to tier 1 if it is enforced by filter by tier. Now for the voting, so you must have a namespace, which is a username. It must not be denied or accepted. To execute a proposal, you must be above the supermajority. This one can be changed through the proposals. So if 66% of the members say yes or no, it is directly set as denied or accepted if you call the execute functions. And that's all for the implementations. To add the new members, you must have invitation points that are not renewable, that you get only during Genesis. They must be T1 or T2. Otherwise, you have to propose to add new members through proposals. Also, each tier have its base power of votes. So in that case, it is 3 for the tier 1, 2 for the tier 2, and 1 for the tier 3. And there is a cap for the number of tier 1. So in this case, you cannot get more than 1/3 of tier 1. And can be better understood in the yes percent, which iterates on every member stores, like every tiers. And it will add at the total votes, the power handler, which depend on the tier, and the total number of yes votes, and the number of the tier members. It is the same for no percent. Anyways, that's all for the percent. You have the init directories, which is basically only test functions, init with users and init. It doesn't really have any relevance in the GovDAO outside of the test. The member store I got quite quickly is managing every members. So the tiers, in that case, you have some renderings over there and some tier canva. And the treasury system lets you able to have some instance of banks to send money from the protocols. There's a list of tokens that's being supported. And from there, you can send money just here using the treasury instance, or you can get the history, the balance, address. That's all for today. If you have any questions, I'm willing to answer. So ask questions in the comment or ask questions on the official Discord server. And I thank you for listening and see you next time.